Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my 2019-2020 NFL Wildcard Weekend predictions. Well, for the Fanatic, last week it was a great way to end out the regular season. If you noticed, during Sunday morning, I made two very quick audibles. If you look at the video in the comments, I made two quick audibles with my Vikings and Texans picks. After reading some information, I switched both of them to the Bears and the Titans respectively, just because I realized they were resting a majority of their starters, and it paid off to get two extra victories. I don't usually do that, but after doing the video and going through the week and then finding out just about a couple days ago and then reading more information about it, knowing that the Vikings and Texans were not really playing for anything. I realized the Vikings weren't playing for anything after the Monday night game when I realized they were going to be locked in the 6th seed, but I already done my video. And then the Titans, I remember saying that Bill O'Brien, excuse me, when he said that he was going to play his starters, then eventually by the weekend, Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins were both on the injury report, and those two guys weren't even going to play if they were going to, not risk anything. It was a moot cause to pick the Texans to win that game. So I switched them before the game started, and I updated every spread pick as well since I had the opportunity, and it paid off very well because last week to end the season, I had double-digit wins. I actually had an identical week from the week before. Against the spread, I went 11-5, and straight up I went 13-3. So that's phenomenal. Then the final 2 weeks, identical records to end it out. And to finish the regular season, I am against the spread 142, 110, and 4 pushes, which equals 56.3%, which is by far my season high in doing against the spread picks. I am very ecstatic about that. I am thrilled about that. And I want to hopefully next year or through the rest of this postseason up that by a little bit to get to around 57. I have 11 games to do it, so hopefully I go 11-0 on the lines. We'll see if that actually works. It's probably not going to, but I hope that will happen. And straight up for the year, I am now 167, 88-1 through 256 games, which equals 65.4%. So that's right around my usual average every year. So I'm glad that I'm still maintaining that rate very well. I actually just looked at a website with a lot of pickers. Excuse me. If I finished the season at that rate, I would be tied for 5th among all professionals across the internet and across major betting and sports organizations. So I'm very proud of that as my record. But what a crazy week in the NFL to end the season. Excuse me. The New England Patriots were 17-point favorites playing the Miami Dolphins, who Tom Brady was 15-1 all-time at home. They end up blowing that game, the largest upset on the point spread in 20 years, and it was only the second time in 137 home games where Tom Brady and Bill Belichick had a lead with 4 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and they blew it. The only other time that happened was with the Chiefs game back in Week 1 of 2017. And it was a great drive by Fitzpatrick, 90-plus yards to go down the field, touchdown to Gesicki, and it shifted the entire AFC picture. It allowed the Chiefs winning 31-21 over the Chargers to get to the 2 seed, and the Patriots are now the 3 seed, having to play the Tennessee Titans this Saturday night. And a fun fact: the New England Patriots have never made the Super Bowl when they've had to enter the playoffs as a wild card team. And the last time this is the first time in a decade the Patriots are playing in the wild card round. The last time they did it was in the 2009 season, where they lost to the Baltimore Ravens 33-14 in Gillette. So that was nuts. When you look at the NFC East, the Cowboys, they put up a fantastic game, 47-16 over the 47. It was a blowout by the Cowboys. It gives the Cowboys an 8-8 season, and Dak played well. He was only 1 yard shy of breaking Tony Romo's single season record. So I thought the Cowboys, they did everything they could, but fortunately for the Eagles, they played the Giants, who they ended up beating 34-17. When Saquon Barkley had that 66-yard touchdown run, I thought it was going to be a game because it was 17-17, and the Eagles the rest of the way, their defense got got to Daniel Jones. He ran through him, or he got a lot of pressure on him, caused a few fumbles, and Boston Scott had a career game, scoring 3 big touchdowns, basically all untouched. And the Eagles now, for the second straight year, after starting out 5-6, went 4 of their last 5 games to win the NFC East again, and give Carson Wentz his first opportunity at the playoffs for his career. And I think for some people, it silences some doubters after that 4-year, $132 million contract he signed this offseason. But also for the Eagles, it was kind of phenomenal. Wentz is the first 4,000-yard passer, and he's the first 4,000-yard passer in NFL history to have no receiver go over 500 yards for the year due to all the injuries. Excuse me. When you look at a lot of the other games, the Titans just whipping up on the Texans, not a big surprise. Derrick Henry goes over 200 yards. He actually wins the rushing title on a 53-yard touchdown run. The Titans now have, I believe, gone 6-2 with Ryan Tannehill since he's come in. Or it might be 6-2 or 7-2, but he's done a fantastic job. And his Titans team is a legitimate threat to the Patriots because the last time they played them, they blew them out. And that was with Mariota. So if I'm the Patriots, you could use the experience. And last time New England played Tennessee when Mike Mularkey was coaching, they got blown out pretty bad. But this Mike Vrabel team, he knows the Patriots, he knows Brady, and he has a style of team that can really compete against anybody. And this is what the Titans do. Usually when they play better competition, it's the weirdest thing. They always seem to play better as the underdog than as they were the favorite. If they're playing the Bills, I actually think the Bills have a better chance to beat them because the Titans always somehow just seem to play to their competition. But since they're the underdog, I actually think the Titans can actually put up a very good fight and possibly beat the Patriots for their first one and done since the 2010 season. Then when you look at how the other seeding went, the Packers get their first bye since 2014, since 2014, getting a huge win, or getting a big win coming down from 17-3 to the Detroit Lions after Mason Crosby got a 30-plus yard field goal right within the left upright. I was surprised at that. If I'm the Packers, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm thankful I have the bye, so then you probably get to play the Saints in the divisional round, which that's not going to be an easy game for the Packers, but I'd much rather be happy having to go to Lambeau than, let's say, having to go to New Orleans or Seattle if that was possible. And then you look at a little bit of the other seeding. When you look at how the Niners, just by an inch, won the NFC West and clinched their first number 1 seed since 1997 with a 26-21 victory over the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks definitely blew that game. There was a controversial pass interference call at the end of the year on Jacob Hollister, which should have been called. But to be fair, the Seahawks should have never been in that situation because they had to spike the ball, which I understand because left tackle George Fant was hurt. But to take a delay of game penalty on that situation to back up 5 yards where you're not even set up the huddle. It wasn't even like it was like you couldn't hear anything. It was just that was just a horrible blunder that cost the Seahawks an opportunity to at least have a home game and maybe have an outside chance to host the NFC Championship if the Niners went into Green Bay and beat them, which I think they could have. But congrats to the Niners. Phenomenal year. Kyle Shanahan would be my coach of the year, especially after what he's done, taking a 4-win team from last year, getting them to 13 wins this year. The running game's been fantastic, second only to the Ravens. And congrats to the Ravens, by the way, for breaking the all-time rushing record held by the Patriots back in the early 80s. Congrats to them. But that was a phenomenal way to end the season, and now I'm excited for the postseason. Excuse me. So, all right, now time for my thoughts and picks for each game. So, on Saturday, just as I predicted on the first game at 4:35 Eastern on ESPN/ABC, when the Buffalo Bills go to the Houston Texans in their annual wildcard game, the Houston Texans are 3-point favorites in this game. I've said this for the last couple weeks, and from what I've seen, I know the Bills did not play well against the Jets, but they rested the majority of their starters, and even with that, they held the Jets with all their offensive starters out there to only 13 points. I'm going to go with the upset here, like I said the last couple weeks. I'm going to take Buffalo here +3, and Buffalo straight up. And then in the Saturday night game, when the 6-seeded Tennessee Titans go to the 3-seeded New England Patriots, The New England Patriots are 5-point favorites in this game. I like New England here to win straight up. I can't take the Titans in this situation, but I'm going to take the Titans on the line because if I've seen the Titans play and just their history, this game is going to be way more competitive than Pats fans want to think. And this may be the last big Brady game for the Pats at home for the Patriots dynasty ever. Because I don't think going to Kansas City or Baltimore in back-to-back weeks, I don't think they come out as the Super Bowl representative. So this may be the last hurrah for all Patriots fans seeing Brady and that team play one more game. So I like New England Patriots here straight up, but I'll take Tennessee +5. Then the Sunday game, the Minnesota Vikings go to New Orleans Saints. Excuse me. The New Orleans Saints are 8-point favorites in this game. I like the New Orleans Saints here -8, and the New Orleans Saints straight up. And finally, in the last Sunday game at 4:40, when the 5-seeded Seattle Seahawks go to the 4-seeded Philadelphia Eagles, the Seattle Seahawks are 1.5-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle here -1.5, and Seattle straight up. All right, it's time for my thoughts on each game. The Buffalo Bills over the Houston Texans. This is one where, like I said before, I just cannot trust Bill O'Brien in the postseason. This is something where I know the Texans on paper, they could have J.J. Watt back. They just signed Whitney Merciless to a 4-year extension. They're going to have all their corners out there. They had Carlos Hyde out there for some odd reason, which I didn't quite understand. They're going to have Hopkins out there. Fuller likely won't be able to go, which will be significant, but they'll have Darren Fells, who's been one of the more consistent tight ends in terms of catching touchdowns this season. And I know the Texans, they've been in this spot before. For the Bills, it's kind of the same thing. They were in the playoffs just 2 years ago in 2017. They played a Jacksonville team very tightly. The final score for that game, remember, was 10-3. And the very next week, the Jaguars, even with some defensive touchdowns, they were able to put up 48 points on the Pittsburgh Steelers the week after only putting up 10 points against very much this same Bills defense. And this Bills defense has been fantastic throughout the entire year. It's in one of the top 2 or 3 defenses pretty much the whole year. They have a running game with Josh Allen. They have a running game with Singletary and Gore. They can control the clock. They can make some plays. And I feel like the biggest thing for me is coaching in this perspective. I just trust Sean McDermott in the situation of what he has compared to Bill O'Brien with what he has. If you look at Bill O'Brien's track record, he's been in this spot now going on his 3rd year out of the 5 he's been with Houston. Okay, actually the 4th time in 5 years he's been in this game on ESPN ABC. First coming out the gate, he got blown out 30-0 by the Kansas City Chiefs in the Alex Smith-Brian Hoyer game. That was the play where Brian Hoyer drew a pick, I believe, in the first play of the game. Or no, that was week 1. But he got blown out by the Chiefs. He beat up Matt McGloin in the second game where he won 27-14, but that was basically a gimme win after Derek Carr had ruptured his knee in week 16, just a couple weeks before. And then they missed the playoffs the next year when Deshaun got hurt. And then in the 4th time, they lost 21-7 to the Colts just last year, and the Colts beat them back-to-back times in Houston. So in all the games he's played, he's pretty much been out-coached and outclassed most of the way. And I know the Bills, look, they weren't as talented as the Colts maybe in terms of Andrew Luck in the offensive line, or, when they had Brian Hoyer, there was a mismatch there. Hopkins was hurt just last year with his shoulders. I get all that, and you can say, well, look, the Texans are the better team. They're going to be motivated. And Bill O'Brien's job is possibly on the line, because I would tell everybody this right now. Bill O'Brien, if he loses, should be fired on Sunday morning. He should be fired. Because if he loses that game, and I think I might have said this last year, earlier this year, he's become the southern version of Marvin Lewis, where the Houston Texans have no desire in the regular season. Nobody in Houston or maybe outside in the NFL world will genuinely care what the Texans do from now on, and unless Bill O'Brien wins a playoff game. Going into 2020, if Bill O'Brien's still the head coach, count me out in caring about what the Houston Texans do. They could have JJ, they could have Whitney, they could have Dylan Cole, they could have Joseph, they could have Colvin, they could have Bradley Roby, they could have all their players out there. They could be rolling through the regular season. I guarantee you nobody will care. Even in the city of Houston, nobody will care what the Texans will do Because what everybody that will doubt the Texans say is, show us in January. Show us in January when it counts. So, this is a huge game for Bill O'Brien, because I believe he should be fired if he loses again on the Saturday, first game in the wild card round. Excuse me. And I really like the Bills here, because I feel like, again, the Bills have been a scrappy team. Allen can make some plays with his feet. Their defense can shut down the Texans' offense to an extent. They can limit the running game. And I feel like the Bills' offense is more dynamic and creative compared to the Texans. Do the Texans have more talent? Sure. But if you look at what the Texans have done the last few weeks, they were not that impressive against Tampa. They had a dogfight against the Titans where if Tannehill doesn't get picked off, they could lose that and possibly get in as a wild card as a 6th seed and flip this all around. So this Texans team hasn't been as impressive. And I know they've had defensive injuries and all that, and Will Fuller, dealing with his groin and his knee has been up and down all year. But I just really like this Bills team based off their coaching and their toughness about this game. There's just something about the Texans here where the Texans may have the talent, they have the home field advantage. The Bills, they don't. Most of these guys haven't played in this spot. They have really no pressure on them compared to the Texans, which you could say is a good thing. But I'm going to take the better coaching here and the more dynamic play calling in Daboll and Allen compared to O'Brien and the Texans. Could the Texans win this game? Absolutely, they could. And maybe I'm being biased because I'm not the biggest Bill O'Brien fan, as probably you could tell. But until they pull this off, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills just because, again, I believe in the Bills coaching staff. I believe in the Bills defense. And I think Josh Allen, with his feet, will make a few more plays than Deshaun Watson will with his arm. And I think Sean McDermott outcoaches Bill O'Brien in this big game. And that's going to be the difference. So that's why Buffalo here, +3. And Buffalo straight up. The next game, the New England Patriots over the Tennessee Titans. This is one where everything in my head's telling me to go with the Titans. If you look at this year, Ryan Tannehill broke the single-season completion percentage record held by Mariota a couple years ago. He's got this offense tremendously affected. They've been scoring over 20-plus points a game since he's been the starter. They have looked much more competitive and more dynamic. A.J. Brown's going to end up as a top 10 receiver, and he's their first 1,000-yard receiver in a very long time. When you look at how they really didn't have that much of a tight end game this year, and with Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith, and a couple of the other guys really not making that much contributions there, the offensive line allowing Derrick Henry to take the rushing title. And the last time the Titans played them, like I said before, they blew them out. I think it was 38-10, and that was one of the bigger upsets of the year, one of the more surprising games, especially with how the Titans have been up and down all year. And it's interesting because I feel like with the Titans, with Mariota earlier this year, it was very up and down. Where if you doubted them in a game, they would usually win. If you bet on them, they usually would lose. But the Titans this time around, under Tannehill, they've been pretty consistent. I know the Colts have been up and down with Brissett. There's been other injuries by the Jags. They beat up a Raider team, which was overhyped. But the Titans have been more consistent and playing at a better rate. And I actually like how the Titans play up against the Patriots because they can control the ball. They have a defense that can shut down the Patriots' offense. And I don't know if the Patriots' offense can move the ball that well on this Titans' defense, especially what they have. But when you look at Belichick's career, he's only lost 2 times in Foxborough. And that was to the 2010 New York Jets, or 3 times. He's lost 3 times to 2 teams: the 2009 Ravens, the 2012 Ravens, and the 2010 New York Jets are the only 2 teams to beat the Patriots in Foxborough at home. So, the Titans last time they came in there, they got pretty much demolished. I know both teams are very different this time around, but I think the Titans. I think there's going to be a moment where I feel like with the Pats, they're just going to be able to find a way to pull out this game. Because they know that this could be the very last time that for that fans and this team, that Tom Brady is going to be starting at home for them. Bill Belichick is 2-0 against former players and assistants in his time in the postseason. He beat Eric Mangini and Bill O'Brien in the postseason over his career over the last several years. So Mike Vrabel, I know he's not been a former coach of his, but being a former player of Belichick's, that is important. And I think the experience this team has, the defense, even though Stephon Gilmore, a lot of people thought was Defensive Player of the Year, if he had if he had problems with Devontae Parker, he's definitely gonna have problems with AJ Brown and Derrick Henry. Deion Lewis, might not be that much of a factor. But I'm gonna take the Pats here because I feel like, again, they have the experience here. Brady has 30 postseason wins, been dominant at home. But yeah, I'm going to take the Pats here just because there's just something about it in this spot at home where this is very much like last year, definitely at a smaller scale, when everybody took the Chargers to beat them at home, to beat the Patriots at home. I was one of those people, no. I'm not going to do it until it happens. This is very much on a smaller scale with the Titans where I just can't take them to win this game. Would it be a huge upset? Maybe not really in terms of how the Titans are playing and how the Patriots are talented. It'd definitely be a shocking and sad way to see the Patriots dynasty end at that moment. But I feel like they get one final push out of Brady and this offense and this team at home before they have to go on probably the toughest 2-game road trip possible to get to the Super Bowl and having to go to Kansas City and Baltimore back-to-back weeks. I don't think they survive out of that. Maybe they get one, maybe with Kansas City. But I'm going to take the Patriots here. The home experience, the confidence in the home experience, the confidence they have in this team, and the motivation they will have from last year, and just trying to, just like last year, they're still here, and they're still the defending Super Bowl champs until somebody knocks them off, and I do not think it'll be the Titans. They will give them as good a shot as probably any of the other wildcard teams, because if this was Buffalo or Houston, I'd probably take the Patriots easily, hands down. This is probably the worst team that the Patriots would want to face in the wildcard round, but I'm going to take the Pats here just because until it happens, I just can't take the Titans. So that's why I like the Titans here +5, but I'll take the New England Patriots straight up. The next game, the New Orleans Saints over the Minnesota Vikings. This one was fairly easy. When you look at the Saints, they've been on an absolute roll. They are, to me, the best team in the NFC, even over the Niners. I know the Niners are their number 1 seed and they beat them, but I think the Saints have played tremendously consistently. They have only lost to one team in their entire schedule, which is the Niners, because they beat the Falcons. And I'm trying to remember the other team. They lost to only 2 teams in their schedule. They lost only the Rams and the Niners. Both games, if Bridgewater would have had more reps or Breeze would stay healthy, they're probably going to beat the Rams in week 2. And then everybody knows that if they don't allow George Kittle to run right up the sideline, they probably beat the Niners and are the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's actually kind of amazing to see how great this Saints team is in the 3 seed in this position where the Packers and Niners were just better on conference records. But I'm taking the Saints here. This is fairly easy because the Vikings, as consistent as they've been, one of the most talented rosters, Kirk Cousins having the best year of his career. He this year is 1-4 against playoff teams. The only playoff team he beat was the Eagles. He got swept by the Packers. He lost to the Seahawks. And who was the other team he lost to? He got swept by the Packers. He lost to the Seahawks. And they lost to the Chiefs. So, in those 5 playoff games, when it matters, Kirk Cousins was 1-4. In a big-time spot. Kirk Cousins, the one time he went to the Superdome, he lost 34-31 as a Redskin. That was a very close game. That was a tough fill for the Redskins to swallow that game. And he's only beat the Saints only one time back in 2015 where they blew him out, but that was the year they had no defense. The other 2 times over the last couple years, when they've had a defense, when they've been on this good run over the last 3 years, he's lost both times. I think with the Saints, they are going to be motivated to play in the Superdome. They've only had 1 loss in the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era inside that Superdome. That was last year in the NFC Championship game where everybody knows what happened there. I feel like the Saints, they have been able to overcome the defensive injuries with Davenport and Rankins. I know they played the Panthers, but the way they beat up the Panthers was exactly the way you wanted to see it with these two level of teams and the differences they have. You have Thomas, you have Hill, you have Kamara, you have Cook, you have a Saints team that's motivated after the last 2 years. They're going to be also motivated to play this Vikings team because most of those guys were there from the Minneapolis Miracle 2 years ago. And they would probably love to have a good amount of revenge against the Vikings team that probably talent-wise can match them in a lot of ways. But I just think in terms of execution, consistency, and trust, I just think the Saints have the edge in all those areas. Could the Vikings make it competitive? Sure. If you look at the Chiefs, they played competitive against them. They played somewhat competitive against the Seahawks. They played competitive against the Chiefs. They played competitive against the Seahawks. And the Packers, both times, really weren't that close. So, they've shown, though, that they can compete against these playoff teams. And with a roster like that, and the pressure the Saints have on them, especially after what happened, the Vikings can maybe, kind of surprise them and force the Saints into some errors that they're not used to. But I just think with the Saints, with the talent they have, with the motivation they have, and that home environment where Kirk Cousins, he only had one playoff start, I don't think the Vikings pull out this game. And I think this is going to be a fairly easy win. It's 8 points, and you could say with the talent that it's surprising that I'm going with the Saints -8. But I just feel like, again, the Vikings, they've had a good run. They've, improved. Mike Zimmer gets to keep his job. They're in the postseason again. Kirk Cousins puts up one of his best career years. But when it comes to New Orleans, you almost kind of wish that the Seahawks would have won. Because I honestly think that the Vikings would much rather play the Seahawks excuse me, back in Seattle where they only lost by 7 points compared to a Saints team that over the last couple times for Kirk Cousins, he hasn't been able to pull out a victory. And there's no Minnesota magic this time around, especially with the Saints' motivation and how they're playing. I just don't think this Vikings team can stop them, especially with how bad the Vikings secondary's been over this year. Definitely the weak spot of their defense. But Dalvin Cook and Kendricks possibly playing will provide them a nice boost. So that's like the New Orleans Saints here, -8, the New Orleans Saints straight up. And last, excuse me, sorry guys, I've had a cold over the last week. And lastly, the Seattle Seahawks over the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a tough one because I feel like with the Eagles, there's a part of me saying the Eagles at home probably might be able to pull this one out. If you're an Eagle fan, this was the team you wanted to lose to get in this position. Because if this was San Francisco and Seattle somehow would have won, I don't think the Eagles would have stood a chance. This game, the Eagles have a genuine chance of winning this game because the Seahawks seem just as banged up as the Eagles. And there's just this weird thing about Pete Carroll in this situation. Last year, very similar, had to go on an NFC East road game, wild card weekend, and lost to Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. I could see very similarly against the Eagles, the same thing. I know the Seahawks, they have probably more talent. Hopefully Dwayne Brown can play. That was a big loss last night. But Marshawn Lynch, he had his first touchdown in 400-plus days as a Seahawk. And the Seahawks played well enough to, get it to 1 yard. And the reason why I'm going with the Seahawks is two big stats. Russell Wilson, his entire career, has never lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. And he, I believe, is now 2-0 or 3-0 on the road in Philadelphia. The Seahawks this year were 7-1 on the road. Best record in franchise history on the road. And Russell Wilson is 17-4 in his last 21 games in the Eastern Time Zone. Could the Eagles, make this game competitive? Sure. They have tight ends. Zach Ertz maybe should be able to come back. And after what you've seen from the Seahawks with George Kittle last week, Zach Ertz and Goddard can cause those same problems. When you look at the Eagles with their running game, hopefully Miles Sanders will be okay. He had to miss most of the second half of an ankle sprain, and he might not be able to go. But you have Boston Scott, and you have Jordan Howard, who hopefully can play well enough to fill in those gaps. The Eagles' pass rush has done pretty well. They got a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones. I know Russell Wilson's a much better quarterback and an athlete than Daniel Jones is. So I think the Eagles have a genuine chance here. But looking at what the Seahawks have, knowing how banged up this Eagles team is, knowing how few receivers they have left, if Ertz can't go, I think they can, Dallas Goedert is not George Kittle. And I somehow could see a way where the Seahawks could take the positives of how, in the second half, they basically were going score for score with the Niners into a game against an Eagles secondary and defense that, even though their front's doing a pretty good job, they beat up the NFC East a majority of the year when they played better competition. When you look at the Eagles, they only had 4 wins outside of their division, and I feel like with the Seahawks, they kind of play similarly to the Eagles, and I think the Seahawks, with the talent they have left and Russell Wilson's playmaking, that's going to be the difference where the Seahawks get this victory in a close game, and they get to move on to the divisional round next week. That's going to be probably my favorite game, because I like that's a competitive game of where is it the Eagles' guts or Seattle's experience that's going to win out. Is it going to be the Eagles' heart and ability to coach pretty well? Because I think Doug Peterson is a coach of the year candidate. He's not going to win it, obviously, because I think Kyle Shanahan should win it first. John Harbaugh should be second, and I put Doug 3, especially with all the injuries they've had to get to the NFC East. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take Russell over Carson. I'm going to take beast mode over the Eagles running backs, especially if Sanders can't go. And I think the Seahawks, even though they lost Michael Kendricks to a torn ACL, I think the Seahawks will have enough defensively, especially with Clowney and Ansah hopefully coming back or staying healthy and being able to play, to win this game in a close one at the Link. Should be a great game, though. So that's like Seattle -1.5 and Seattle straight up. I want to say a couple quick things about some of the coaches, and then that'll be it. So, for Pat Shurmur getting fired, that was obvious. He was 9-23 as a coach. I think he won just as many games as he did in Cleveland, his 2 years there, as he did with the Giants. So, they weren't going anywhere. And I think the Giants' job, it's not a bad job, but Daniel Jones definitely disappointed me after that 2-2 start. You have Saquon, you have Tate, you have Slayton, you have some young corners, and you have a young corner in DeAndre Baker. You have Lawrence. You have Peppers, who's a nice piece. You have Roses, who's a decent kicker. You just signed your punter to an extension. So the Giants have something there, but I feel like the guy that they should go after maybe is a Greg Roman or a Wink Martindale to help with their defense. Wink Martindale to help with their defense, and let Joe Brady, who's going to be paired with Don Martindale apparently, run the offense. He's done wonders with LSU this year with Joe Burrow and that team. I think he can make definitely improvements with this Giants offense. Matt Rule, I've heard that too. He was a Giants staff member in 2012. They both worked together. He and Gettleman did on the Giants, but I wouldn't want that, especially with what he's leaving. Baylor's a much better job, I think, at this point than what the Giants have, but we'll see. Rivera going to Washington. Sorry, guys. Excuse me. Ron Rivera probably going to the Washington Redskins by the end of today. I think that is very, it's a good move for him. But I'm going to probably make a hot take. Ron Rivera is not as good as people think he is. Okay? In 9 years, the Carolina Panthers, under his leadership, won 3 division titles. Do you know who also did that? Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett won 3 divisions in 9 years. And everybody doesn't like Jason Garrett. But with Ron Rivera, everybody was so excited about Ron Rivera getting that. Okay? So, I'm just saying. I know Rivera's the better coach. And he is the better coach because of his postseason success. He got to a Super Bowl. He has 3 postseason wins compared to Jason's 2. But yeah, I just want to mention that to people. Ron Rivera and Jason Garrett have similar records. So everybody that's all excited, and you could say for the Panthers, yeah, boy, did they give up right after Rivera quit. Because when they played Atlanta, they got pretty much blown out. Seattle, they were getting blown out until the Seahawks defense did Seattle things and made it a close game. And then they got blown up by the Colts, and they got embarrassed by the Saints. So you can say, they miss Ron Rivera. And that Panthers job, you know what? Maybe that next coach might not be as good. But everybody that's all excited in Washington or saying Ron Rivera is such a great coach, slow your roll. Ron Rivera, to me, is a bit overrated because, again, he had 3 division titles in 9 seasons, just like Jason Garrett had 3 division titles in 9 seasons. He had no back-to-back winning seasons, just for the record. No back-to-back winning seasons in his 9 years there as the Panthers head coach. And with what the Redskins have to do, they're going to have Adrian Peterson. You're going to have Alex Smith under contract, which you may get rid of, which you could argue was a mistake or not to keep him. You're going to have Haskins there. You're going to have to find a tight end. You're going to have to find a new left tackle. You might have to get rid of your running back. You might get rid of your cornerback. You might get rid of Ryan Kerrigan. You have a lot of stuff you have to move with this team, and I think he's got a mentality to work out. I'll give him that. He's got a personality where the Panthers loved him, and I think the Redskins will too. But there's a lot of things that I'm not as confident in Ron Rivera being able to keep his job long-term in Washington as other people may think. And then Freddie Kitchens getting fired in Cleveland. Well, that's just obvious. That's one of those things where I disagreed with. There's part of me that understood it, but kind of disagreed with it as well. Like, I understood it because what Freddie brought there as a culture was not sustainable. From the helmet incident, from the one player, Whitehead, causing death threats, to all the penalties, to all the dysfunction, to all the yelling, you couldn't keep that. But to fire that coach, who again was in his first year, you're now going into your 4th coach within 2 years. You had Hugh Jackson, Greg Williams in the interim, Freddie Kitchens, and now going into your 3rd year, this is your 4th coach, who may not like Baker Mayfield. And I heard that the Browns are even looking up Josh McDaniels. I disagree with that because I think Josh McDaniels is a snake. Remember, this is the guy that had 2 jobs provided to him. And just last year, or 2 years ago, was given the opportunity to coach the Colts. And then Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick talked to him, and they opened up Narnia. Because Bill Belichick said, I'm going to let you go deeper into my world. That was actually a genuine, almost like misquote, but almost a direct quote of what they said. And he pulled out of the coach job, and Frank Reich took it. So if the Cleveland Browns genuinely want Josh McDaniels, or, I can't even believe that guy doesn't deserve any head coaching job besides the Patriots if Bill Belichick decides to retire because he's been that loyal to him. But for the Browns, that's probably the best job I would want for talent. Because if you could get somebody in there like a Mike McCarthy, who I would probably go with, an experienced coach that could help, they've got a lot of talent on the defensive and offensive side of the ball. For the first time in Browns franchise history, they've had 2 1,000-yard receivers and a 1,000-yard rusher on the same team. Nick Chubb ended up 2nd in the league in rushing. Job well done to him. But, yeah, I'd like, for the Cleveland Browns, that's probably the best job out there. Outside of the Cowboys, but with Jerry Jones having to deal with that and Jason Garrett maybe staying or going, I won't want to deal with Jerry Jones. So, out of all the jobs that are available, give me the Browns one because I have the least amount of pressure. I know I might have horrible ownership, but I have the most talent, and if you get everybody lined up and bring in discipline, you have a team that can hit a good potential for the next few years and elevate that team into a playoff contender, which everybody thought they were going to be this past year. All right, so those are my thoughts on the coaching staff, on the coaching changes and the coaching possibilities, and my thoughts on my picks and predictions for Wild Card Weekend this week. So good luck to all the players, coaches, fantasy players, fellow prognosticators, and any postseason fantasy football players. And until next week, until the new year, I remember said it in my video last week, but today's still 2019. Until next week in 2020 when I'll see you for the first time for my divisional round picks, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.